So to respect everybody's time, we're gonna get started. We had some more people registered, but they will be connecting as we begin. So again, to all of you today, thank you so much for being here. It's super exciting to see you. Those of you who come every month, hi again. Those of you who are just joining, just know that we do this every month, and every month the conversations are getting even more interesting. So you're always welcome to join us. Today, we are talking about smart innovation, ensuring strategic fit and sustainability. And we're going to tackle an important pain that we have identified along the years, and Greg has identified along the years when it comes to innovation. I'm not going to get ahead of him, so I'm going to let him introduce that pain and that job to be done that we have identified when it comes to smart innovation and ensuring strategic fit when it comes to innovation projects. So for those of you who do not know him, Greg Gully is here with us. He's the CEO of Solvnext, and he will be introducing this and guiding us through this conversation. My name is Cristina. I'm also part of the Solvnext team, and I'm super thrilled to be here. So without any further ado, I will give the word to Greg so he can begin, and I will be having some interactions with you guys on the chat. So see you there. Greg?
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Chris. And as always, feel free to interrupt. You can ask questions in chat. Chris and Alfredo will be monitoring that to make sure they come to my attention if I'm caught up in conversation. I'm also away from my usual desk setup, so I'm limited to one screen today. So I feel a little handicapped in that way, but so I'm tracking things a little bit harder. But today, what we're going to cover the three things. We're going to introduce the big pain and problem, as Chris mentioned, the job to be done. So we are now trying, whenever we're thinking about the innovation work that we're doing with organizations, with what we refer to as leaders of next, that are people like you who are responsible for driving innovation in their organization, or maybe a perpetual team member on innovation teams, the people who are showing the organization the way forward. We're trying to frame these conversations around what is the big pain and problem that people are experiencing, what are the jobs to be done that in order to take action on that and overcome the problem, and to make the most of the opportunity that sits inside every problem, and then what are the tools for the job to be done. And for those of you who are return participants in the session, you'll know we are talking more and more about Next tools. We tend to think about the future tools that we're generating as having an AI component and an AI assist. What I'm going to show you today is a good old-fashioned Solvnext tool that we use all the time. It can be used in lots of different ways. We will be looking at whether there's interest in demand for AI assist with this particular tool. And then there's some other supporting tools, drills and frameworks and things that we use that we're gonna mention, and if time allows and if there's interest, we can go look at some of those. So what are the resources that are available to us as we try to ensure that the innovation work that's being done in an organization is actually aligned with the strategy of the organization, the goals of the organization, the purpose, the values, the vision of the organization, and how do we make sure that we stay aligned to that, and that we are not moving forward on innovation opportunities beyond the point where we really should, where we start to understand that there's a reason why we should stop. So how do we get to a no that makes sense, and take the resources that we're investing in innovation and redeploy them onto the next opportunity? So we're gonna look at some of the tools and approaches for doing that. So let's just double click on the big pain and problem. This statement is sort of thinking about what we hear from leaders all the time, is that organizations struggle to align their innovation efforts with their strategic goals. That leads to wasted resources and projects that don't actually fulfill their objectives. And without a structured decision-making process, they're putting both the initiatives at risk, as well as the resources required to do those. So they're not seeing that the innovation work that they're doing is delivering adequate return. And whatever way you think about that value, it could be financial, but it could be other forms of return, as we discussed previously. And it actually stifles the ability to create new value in organizations. So we hear that. I'm wondering if even in the chat, if this pain or problem resonates with any of you. So if it does, give me a thumbs up. That, yeah, I experienced that. Maybe even if you would express it differently, I'd love to hear in the chat how you might express it. So feel free to think about this. I give a presentation, a talk several of us do actually in the organization, called The Problem with Innovation. And it begins by talking about the dissatisfaction that a lot of organizations are feeling around innovation. And quite a bit of that dissatisfaction can be tied to the fact that it's not producing the outcomes that people are looking for. It's actually not achieving the goals that they've set for themselves. And so there's a sense that we're wasting resource on it. And even the hype around innovation could be cyclical in organizations where there will be a lot of interest and a lot of excitement, and then disinterest and people who are divesting from innovation. So we see that kind of cyclical swing, the pendulum swing, and that's another way that pain might be experienced or observed. So what then is the big job to be done given this lack of alignment? What we're going to spend time in this conversation talking about and exploring is this task of rigorously assessing all initiatives, all innovation opportunities against a strategic and operational criteria. So is there an established and clear and known and understood criteria that executives and managers and innovation team leaders and innovators share, that they're all working toward and they're all using to evaluate what's going to move forward? The evaluation needs to include strategic alignment, portfolio fit, which will go into desirability around solutions that are emerging. This idea of acceptable loss, that is, as we're making our decisions, can we afford to expend the capital that's going to take to get to the next step or the next level of certainty about the solution that we're working on? Is what we're working on actually producing option value? Is it producing value for the organization that wouldn't be there if we weren't doing it? And we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. So that's really how we think about the job and what we're going to spend time talking about today. So let's just step back and look at where this particular job fits in an innovation system, what we refer to as a next system. So if we think about a next system, we actually think about it as having these three layers. They're not labeled, but the top layer is the people layer, the middle layer is the process layer, and the bottom layer is the platform. So we think about a simple stack of people, process, and then platform. And in that process layer, we have these three buckets. And in the middle, you see there that there are these rules. The rules are that govern how innovation is done in an organization. And one of the elements of that rule set is, in fact, the decision-making criteria. That's what we're going to focus on here, is how do we decide what's in the portfolio, and how do we decide whether or not that innovation opportunity moves to the next step of development, right? And so that's the criteria. I look at it in a broader context. If we step back a little bit from the decision-making criteria, that exists within a set of operating principles. And those operating principles for innovation work might be different. In fact, they should be different than the principles for the performance system. Because the rule set that governs how innovation has to take risk. It has to do it in a smart, intelligent way. The performance system usually works very hard to avoid risk. So most of our operating principles in a performance system are around risk avoidance, around efficiency and productivity, whereas the rule set, the operating principles in a next system are going to be rules that allow us to explore and experiment and discover and learn and actually have tolerance for being wrong. Is that a question that I have, or was that? I'm not sure if my headset's talking to me or one of you was.
It was a sneeze.
A sneeze. Oh, God bless you. Okay. All right. So we look at these 5 elements of the next system as having an outsized impact on the rest of the system. They actually, if you focus on these 5 things, operating principles, a decision criteria that decides when things move forward in your next development process, that determine what's in your portfolio, and that actually determine what's going to be funded and what's not going to be funded, that if you focus on those, then many of the other components of the innovation system, of the next system, start to mature and develop and become more established in an organization. It's partly why we concentrate there. So when does this big job to be done actually matter? If I could just go back and look at this next development component, the innovation, how do we move innovation opportunities from uncertainty to certainty? If we look at this next cycle, so this is a diagram many of you have seen before. If we look at this next cycle, this is a discovery-driven development cycle. That is, at each step in the process, we are taking action to learn. We're running an experiment or a test, making some effort to discover and learn something new that makes us more confident in the hypothesis we have around the innovation opportunity, whether that's a hypothesis around a problem, a pain, or a hypothesis around a solution to that. And so each step represents a step of discovery, of learning, and greater confidence or greater certainty about the hypotheses that we have. So the first opportunity really to use the tool that I'm going to show you, what we call the Super 7 and this decision-making criteria, is after we've done this, generated a set of pain hypotheses. That is, pain hypotheses represent innovation opportunities. There is a problem, a level of dissatisfaction in the market or in our organization that warrants our attention and deserves some innovation, that a new solution, a new approach would be welcomed and adopted. So we have a hypothesis about that. We want to validate that. And then we want to make a decision about which of those are going to actually move into the incubation stage of development. This is interesting. I just wanted I see a note here in the chat that just caught my eye. I've often found that while the general consensus seems to be that innovation requires the implementation of some new process or tech, greater success can often be gained by leveraging existing things, albeit in an unconventional way. That also minimizes risk and garners buy-in from risk-averse leaders. And the key is to show that what's in it for me, for all involved stakeholders. So I think that's a good point. I think anytime you can repurpose or reuse existing processes, that's great. If you think about that next system, if I looked at the operating principles, what we often discover when we do the work with our clients is the existing operating principles actually inhibit a new set of principles as required. And so there may be components of a system that can be reused or redeployed, and there can be things that you can identify and say, those are actually anchors or obstacles that we need to, when we're doing innovation work, we need to ignore or find a way around or find a way through. So in this cycle, the first stage of decision-making, formal decision-making, is where we show this Super 7, the S7. We're making a decision about which hypotheses, which innovation opportunities that we've identified are we going to stop, we're not going to continue working on, we're going to continue, or we got to repeat, we've got to go back and do some additional work because we don't have sufficient evidence that we should move forward. The next one is down here in the incubate stage, where we actually want to use this. We got the same pain and the same problem and the same job to be done, but now we're actually checking against the solution hypotheses and whether those should move forward. And then when we get into the accelerate stage and we're actually testing and trying things live in market, we're asking a set of questions again, same pain and problem, same job to be done, same criteria being applied to decide what should we stop, what should we continue, what should we repeat. Connected to these different sort of gates, if you will, check-in points, to each of those is this idea of attrition. That is, we're going to have fewer innovation opportunities that move from formulate into incubate, and fewer that move from incubate into accelerate, and fewer from accelerate into operate. And that's a very different mode of operating when you're doing innovation than it is in a performance system. As a performance system, if you're given 10 projects, you're expected to deliver all 10. In an innovation system, if you start with 100 ideas, you might only get 33 that come out of formulate because you've gone and said they're not big enough or significant enough that they don't represent opportunities worth moving for. So that's it. This just starts to illustrate some of the moments. The first moment, what's going to be in our portfolio. The second moment, what's promising that we actually ought to develop and start to test. After accelerate and doing something live, what should we move into operation? And then from operation, what should we actually be looking at growing? So we can actually move to say, which of these things that are operating ought we be looking at scaling up? And do we need to apply new innovation to scale these? Is it going to require a new approach to actually operate the solution at scale? So those are just some examples of when this decision making, the strategic decision making that we're talking about, can happen, and it connects to this initial question about how do we make sure that we have alignment? How do we make sure that our executives, our managers, and our innovators, that their efforts are aligned and that we're working towards a shared set of goals, we're executing a shared set of strategies, and we're achieving that in a way that's efficient in terms of the resources that we're using. Before I go on, any questions, comments, anything that anybody wants to add in? Okay. So the first,
question, Jay?
Yeah.
Is this framework linear, or can you start at any point based on where you are in your initiatives?
Oh, that's a great question. In an ideal world, it would start at number one and move around. None of us live in an ideal world. If you do, send me your address because I'd like to come join you. Because we're all doing this work on initiatives and opportunities that are already in progress. One of the drills you will find in the Next Lab, if you are a user of the Next Lab, one of the drills you'll find in there is called "You Are Here," and "You Are Here" looks at this diagram and says, identify the innovation opportunities you're currently working on and identify where they currently are on this diagram. What's really interesting about that is what you'll see is most innovation enters after 2. So it enters at the solution hypothesis generation and prototyping steps. And that's because innovators are excited about solutions and technologies and things like that. So they jump into solving without necessarily having done the problem validation work, without having done the work that it says that there's actually a need here that we should be working on and addressing. So if you use the framework like this to identify, Alfredo, I see we got some new people joining, so thanks for letting them in. If we use the framework for identifying where are our innovation opportunities currently, you might need to ask yourself, do we need to do a work back? Is it important for us to go backward and do some validation work as we move forward as well? And that's not uncommon. I know, if we're working with an organization and we see that they have 70 initiatives that appear to have entered in at the solution hypothesis generation, and that can happen because somebody might put out a call for ideas, right? They have some kind of an idea competition. And so they get a bunch of ideas and then they're evaluating those ideas and moving them forward, but they haven't gone back and said, let's, for each of these ideas, go back and validate the real pain and problem that they're addressing, and let's size that pain and problem and determine whether that's worth moving forward or not. So you don't have to start at 1, but we always encourage you to go back for significant initiatives. Make sure you go back and say, is there additional validation work that we should be doing before we proceed? Or we're going to move forward, but we're going to move forward cautiously while we go back and do some of the work some of the steps that we skipped. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into the tool that we're going to look at here, which is the Super 7 criteria. So the Super 7, again, if you're a lab user, or if you've gone through a Think Wrong intensive or Leaders in Next intensive, you have seen the Super 7 at least once. The Super 7 is a criteria. It's available in the lab currently as a poster. You can use it virtually or print it out and use it in the room, or use it as a worksheet. We often just use it as a worksheet and ask ourselves or ask team members to fill out the responses to it. It's a set of 7 questions, and then each of the questions that I'm going to show you is going to have a list of supporting tools. These are tools that are also available in the lab. Okay. And Chris just asked in the chat, do you currently have an account in the Next Lab? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. We know many of you do, but go ahead and tell us if you do. So the first question that we're asking, and this seems like an obvious one for strategic alignment, but you'd be surprised how often it's not asked, is there strategic fit? So there's an innovation opportunity. Somebody in your organization comes up to you and says, we really have to do this. This is, this is something we've got to redirect some resources to. It represents a significant opportunity. We really got to do it. So the first question we would ask is there strategic fit? Meaning, does it align, go all the way back if the organization has articulated its vision? Does it align with the vision of the organization? Is it consistent with the purpose of the organization? And do we actually have we given ourselves permission to be working on these kinds of initiatives? Is this something that's consistent with why we exist? Is it consistent with our values, or does it represent an opportunity that's going to actually ask us to bend or violate our values in some way? So those are internal questions that we should be asking for all opportunities, but we remind our innovators, let's go back and make sure that we're aligned with with the platform elements in that system architecture that I showed you. Are we aligned with our vision, with our values, with our purpose? Then, is the opportunity consistent with the goals that we've articulated in the organization? For those of you who participated in conversations around the Worth It tool and serious capital building, when we ask, is it consistent with our goals? We want to think about what goals do we have around human capital, our talent, or lives, the impact we want to have on lives. What kind of goals do we have around our intellectual capital? Are we building new proprietary methods or approaches, or even if I was working for Disney, characters and stories that create a strategic advantage that are a unique property or asset of ours? Are we creating political capital? So importantly, are we going to gain influence in the organization? What are our influence goals? What kind of influence we want to have inside and in our marketplace, and if we need it politically or with regulatory bodies and compliance and so on? Are we actually articulating those political capital goals? Have we identified reputation goals? Are we doing this? Does this opportunity support a brand building goal that we have? How we want to be known and understood in the marketplace? Does it support a social capital goal? Is it expanding our network? Is it expanding our community? Does it create societal benefit that extends beyond our shareholders? And is it actually consistent with our financial capital goals? So when we talk about goals, we like to think very broadly about what are the goals of an organization, and do these innovation opportunities support them, and do they support the priorities we have set for those goals? Because not all capital is created equally, and organizations can have, for different portfolios, they can have different sets of goals, and they can have different sets of capital priorities. Is it consistent with the I think I've hit all those, right? So those three: our vision, our purpose, and our goals. Now, there are some other tools. So if you are a lab user and you want to go out and explore some tools, you can jot these down. The goal builder drill, the strategy builder drill, and then the vision and purpose template are all very useful for having teams both define their goals and their strategies, and for defining the vision and purpose if that work hasn't already been done. You might be surprised that some organizations, when we say it's their strategic fit, they kind of look at each other and say, well, our strategy is to make money. And then you have to say, okay, that's great. Let's back up and do, when we're talking about going backward, doing some of the fundamental work, we might need to do some of this fundamental work. The Super 7 seems to be an activity of many days or weeks. The Super 7, asking the question might just be happening in a review session. So like I showed on that next cycle, there are these formal check-in points. But every day, if I'm working on a team, I should be asking myself, are we assuming that they're strategic fit, or do we know that they're strategic fit? Have we proven that, right? If I'm working if I'm a manager and I see a team working on something, I want to ask myself that. So there are check-ins that could happen in a matter of hours, but it is ongoing work, and you want to keep referring to this. What if it's wanted but not necessarily needed? So that's an interesting semantic distinction that you're asking in terms of what we tend to focus on with our clients in the organizations that we work with is innovation opportunities that have a significant need. And the significant need is connected to a level that is, first of all, that it's prevalent, that the market that we're serving, many people are experiencing, that the opportunity actually exists among many people in this marketplace. If we're thinking about a problem that many people are experiencing it, people don't typically experience opportunities, something that they want, until it exists or until it's in front of them. The desire for it usually is connected with a dissatisfaction with something that already exists, right? And that could be something tangible, or it could be something intangible. Like a lot of self-image benefit from brands that are fashion brands have to do with self-image and self-worth, not is this bag better than this bag, because pretty much all bags are created equally, but some cost $15,000 and some cost $15. And they're the same bag, right? Essentially. So there's an interesting conversation about need versus want, and we can get it. We won't go deep into the sort of psychological distinction between those, but we look at, is it prevalent? Is there a desire among many people, or a need or dissatisfaction among many people? Is it severe, meaning people are experiencing it and it's in some way it's debilitating the current situation, or they feel it acutely. So there's an emotional experience that's very acute. And then is it costly to them? Like not having the new thing, does it cost them something significant? And so in this case, this prevalence, severity, and consequence, or cost, are the things that we look at to determine if something is and we t-shirt size, and we look at large, medium, and small, and we say if it's some combination of two larges and a medium, then has urgency. And if it's aligned with our vision, purpose, and goals, then it has strategic relevance. So we would look at that. And there's a drill called strategy by, what do I think about? By urgency, that you can use for sorting those. So that's the strategic fit. The next question that we ask in the Super 7 is their portfolio fit? So first we said their strategic fit. The answer might be yes. It's consistent with our vision, our values, our purpose, our goals. It's consistent with our strategies that we've already articulated as an organization of how we're going to do things. But is there portfolio fit? Do we already have teams working on this? Are we overweighted in a particular solution, or is there white space? We've identified an opportunity and nobody's currently working on it. So when we think about the portfolio, we think about we talk about 4 different portfolios. We talk about an optimized portfolio. Those are innovation opportunities that are going to be used to improve something that already exists. So it's an enhancement to an existing solution. But it's going to require some innovation, not just an optimization of some settings, but we're actually going to have to do something new there. We have the grow portfolio, which is a sort of classic definition of growth. Modify something to address a new market, do something new for an existing market, or do something new for a new market, right? So is there some innovation opportunity that represents a growth opportunity? And that could be a product, but it could also be something like a policy, that we're going to actually implement a policy that allows us to serve more people in our organization, or a policy that's going to attract more people into our organization for recruiting purposes. And then we also want to look at renewal. So those are opportunities that represent opportunities to disrupt a marketplace, to transform the way things are done. And we talk about innovation opportunities, another portfolio, which is maximize. That is there something we're currently doing that we should stop doing? When we stop doing it, can we put it in the maximize portfolio and capture the value that was created from it as we exit it? So I have 2 examples from a client of ours that makes airplanes. One, at one point they had a team that was working on they had 5 teams working on electric. I always think about how to phrase this: EV helicopter taxis. So electric helicopter taxis for urban environments. So they were overweighted in EV helicopters. They didn't need 5 teams. 2 teams was probably sufficient. So that's an example of looking at it, taking stock of all the projects that they had and saying, wow, we have too many teams working on this. Whereas when we first started, they didn't have any teams working on carbon net zero alternative fuels for jet aircraft. So they were underweighted there. That was a big opportunity. Alternative fuels is a huge opportunity space to be innovating in the commercial aircraft marketplace. So looking at that and saying, oh, we got a white space here. We actually need to be doing something there. So thinking about portfolio fit. Is this task related to the classical BCG portfolio matrix evaluation tool? There are numerous evaluation tools out there. This is a very practical one, which is a blend of other things. So, if you'll recognize the 4 portfolios, the first 3 are similar to McKinsey's 3 horizons of growth, with some variation. So I wouldn't say that I know BCG's portfolio matrix deeply, but it may be that there's a lot of overlap because of the doing this work in this space. Is it wanted is the next question we ask. So first of all, if there's not strategic fit, then we don't move forward on it. If there's strategic fit, but there's not portfolio fit, we don't move forward on it. Each of those decisions is a sequential. Each of those decisions is preserving capital. We're not going to spend capital on an opportunity that doesn't align with the strategic elements of the organization. We're not going to invest capital in an opportunity where we're already over invested in those, or we just don't actually have a place in our portfolio for that kind of opportunity. I would say there's not a strategic fit. The next question we're asking is it wanted? And there's 2 dimensions to is it wanted. We spoke a little bit about this around the pain, the problem. Is there an actual acute need? And then is the solution wanted? So we want to validate if there's significant dissatisfaction with the current state, and if it's significant enough to motivate adoption of a new solution. I think that MP3 player versus iTunes and what has evolved out of iTunes is a good example of that. There are lots of MP3 players. There wasn't really any desire. There wasn't a significant enough desire for people to broadly adopt MP3 players as a new product. It was something out there. Some people wanted it, but it wasn't significant. There are lots of MP3 players that were not flying off of the shelf. What Apple did is it stepped back and looked at dissatisfaction with both music publishing and music consumption, and it designed a system for music production, delivery, and consumption that happened to have an MP3 player in it. And they've sold a lot of those MP3 players, right? As iPods and shuffles, and now as iPhones. So the is it wanted question is the looking at both the pain and the problem, is there something significant, and is the solution that we're imagining something that actually is wanted? Now we ask that question and want to validate that in the incubate stage that I showed on the next cycle before we get into how are we going to do this? Because we don't want to invest a lot of capital on building prototypes for something that's not wanted. At this stage, though, if we're going out and testing solution hypotheses with people, we're most often we see people are storyboarding or telling narratives, creating quick Facebook ads, things like that, just to visualize the concept, but not to figure out exactly how the thing is going to work. So we're going to test the concept of the solution and do some demand sensing around that. We have a great example of that with a pet food company that was building a product. The venture team that we were working with came up with a Facebook ad that they posted, and in 24 hours, they had 10,000 people say, I'm interested in that product. The product didn't exist at all. The concept for the product existed. But what they got in 24 hours was a very strong signal of demand, a confirmation that this thing is wanted, and they got a really great list of beta users for when the product was available. So this is about this operating principle that we're using here is to expend the least amount of capital to gain the most amount of insight, the most amount of knowledge. So what at this point we're doing is we're testing our assumptions about whether it's wanted. Once we're certain enough or confident enough that it's wanted, then we're going to move to how exactly are we going to do it? How are we going to build it? We're going to start to model it and prototype it. And when we're asking ourselves the question of it's doable, it's not just the technical feasibility that some of you might be familiar with from Lean Startup. It's an Eric Ries model. It's not just is it technically possible, but it's also, is it possible for our organization to pull it off? Can we actually do it? Do we have the resources, the talent, the know-how, the ecosystem, the partners, the technologies, whatever it might be required? Do we have the will? And that might be the political will, it might be the corporate will, it might be the
Obtén tu
cultural
domo
will.
y quieres llevar tu proyecto a internet, tú
I'm not sure what that was, but if it's a question, go ahead and put it in chat. I didn't quite get it. Okay. It's like maybe we lost Matthew. He's back in the room. And then, are there unsurmountable legal, regulatory, or compliance obstacles? That may be a reason for an organization to not move forward. There may be some organizations move forward with innovation that is beyond the current regulatory environment. And you can look at things like the Boring Company, which is one of Musk's companies, right? The Boring Company is way out ahead of federal and state and local regulations on traffic. What they're doing is they're proving the ability to do something and testing the desirability and feasibility of something, and then they're going to go back and try to reconcile the regulatory issues. The regulatory topics is often not receiving the importance of security. That's absolutely correct. It's also why we often encourage that innovation teams build an alliance with somebody who's dealing with the regulatory environment, who is either meeting with regulators on a regular basis, has influence with regulators, and has strategic partners with regulators. So an important one there. All right. So is it doable? And I haven't been reviewing the tools at the bottom here, but hopefully you're seeing them. Is their portfolio fit? The next lab actually has portfolio and innovation opportunity building capabilities and functionality in it. Or is it wanted? There's a validation. Is it wanted validation template for conducting validation interviews? And we have an AI focus group tool that you ought to check out. We'll show you, or at least point you to that. Is it doable?
It's puking.
What's that? Okay. Is it doable? It has the solution hypothesis prototyping template, as well as stack it in steps away. Stack it in steps away is really interesting to see which portfolio does this opportunity belong in, and how many adjacencies from existing capabilities is it? Because the more adjacencies away from our current capabilities, our current strengths, the more ambitious we're being, and at some point it may be outside of our remit, right? So typically optimize solutions are 1 to 2 adjacencies away, grow 2 to 3, and then renew might be 4, 5, 6 adjacencies away. Further than that, 7, 8 adjacencies away, you're really talking about a startup. It's an entirely new set of capabilities potentially. All right. And then, is it worth it? So and again, we've done this in a sequence. Is there strategic fit? Yes, continue. Is there portfolio fit? Yes, continue. Is it wanted? Yes, great. Now, is it doable? Yes, great. Is it worth it? Yes, great. Or no, stop. So is it worth it? We're asking, does it have the potential to produce the capital impact that we desire? Remember, I spoke about that earlier on. What's the kind of capital impact that we're trying to produce? What are our capital priorities? And do we think this has the potential to do that? What are the crucial capital risks that are presented both with the development as well as the implementation of the solution? What are the capital needs for development and implementation and operation? And what are the potential contributions that it might make as we implement it and operate it? And we have a next tool called the Worth It tool that's available for you to try out and test, where you can evaluate opportunities this way. The drills, there's a set of underlying drills that also are in the lab for that tool. Opportunity at a glance and portfolio at a glance are also 2 tools that exist in the lab that are really helpful for evaluating whether or not something is worth it and making a strategic decision from a portfolio management perspective, not just a one-off, not one individual innovation opportunity, but from the full collection of opportunities that we're working on. Next question is there acceptable affordable loss? So if on that next cycle diagram that I showed you, and I said each step is a learning step. We're going to learn something as we move from one step to the next, as we move from one stage, from formulate into incubate, incubate into accelerate, accelerate into operate, operate into grow. And each step within that, each step represents some investment of capital. And so we have to ask ourselves, can we afford to make the investment to produce the next level of learning, the learning from investment that we're after, that LFI that we talk about? So what forms of capital are going to be required to take the next step, and can we afford to spend that or put it at risk if we learn that we should stop, right? Are we okay if we make the investment and we get to a stop, or should we stop now? So that's an important funding question, and not just financial funding, but the allocation of other finite resources that the organization has. So that's and it's not what's the total budget for the opportunity. It's what's the next step going to cost. What's it going to take to get through the next to the next point of development. Yeah, another mindset shift that's really crucial here and important in doing this work. Again, different from the performance management mindset and the innovation system is a team working on an innovation opportunity who gets to a no has done something valuable. A no is as valuable as a go. A no is as valuable as keep going. Because if we get to a no at any of these steps, what we've done is we've conserved capital, we've protected capital, and we've allowed ourselves to take that capital and to redeploy it against another innovation opportunity. And if you're working in an organization that only has one innovation opportunity, I'd suggest you look for another organization to work for. I doubt any of you are working for that. Most of us are working for organizations that have more innovation opportunities than we know what to do with. The big job is prioritizing those and making sure we're working on those that have the greatest potential. All right. Companies are very much afraid of no, and that is the idea of the sunk cost fallacy. Absolutely, Vasily, you're right about that. And that's why it's a leader of next mindset that needs to be developed, and it needs to be coached and mentored in an organization and that's why we talk about those different operating principles. This idea of attrition, when we work through a discovery-driven development cycle, not everything will be completed. We will get to a no. And if people are also very concerned about risk, so it's a way that we de-risk things. That is, we're not going to move forward if something's not aligning with the goal or showing that it has a significant enough opportunity to produce the capital impact that we're looking for. So when we look at that worth it tool, one of the calculations we do is what is the capital impact, and we score that. And if the score on the capital impact is not greater than the score of the capital risk, then we don't do it, right? So we can get to a no and have a structured way of getting to a no that everybody feels good about. The fail fast mindset is good. We like to take the word fail out of that and say put a learn fast mindset. Like, let's learn fast, right? Let's learn as fast as we can, even if we learn that the answer is no, right? And what we've done is invalidated a crucial hypothesis, and we made a decision to either refine our hypothesis or to stop and redeploy our assets, right? So this question about acceptable, affordable loss ties in with the think wrong practice. Those of you who are familiar with think wrong, of betting small. Let's design the smallest experiment that takes the least amount of capital to produce the greatest amount of learning so that we can have more certainty. We can take those assumptions and start to convert them over to knowledge or highly confident assumptions that we're confident on acting on, right? The seventh question is there real option value? So does this opportunity that we're working on actually produce option value? Does it allow the organization to do something at a different speed than it currently does it? Can we go faster or slower? Can we pause? Can we operate on a speed dimension? Can we operate in a different way than we were able to operate before? Can we go to market faster? Can we serve more people faster? Can we tamp back and serve when in quiet periods, serve fewer people and still thrive? Does it give us a scale optionality? Does it allow us to operate at a small scale, a medium scale, or a large scale? Can we serve many people or very few people, big regions, small regions, right? So think about the dimensions of scale, and is it producing that kind of option value? Is it creating flexibility option value? Again, we have a client that's very good at bending metal. They make 70% of the world's light truck chassis. They look at manufacturing innovation that says not only we want to bend metal to make chassis, we want to bend metal to make many other things. So if they're innovating a line for manufacturing, they're looking at what else can this line produce. When we filled our orders for chassis, can we start doing light posts for cities or platforms for light rail systems, or what other things can this produce? How can we build a system that actually provides us with that kind of flexibility? And does it create option value? So do we have option value at exit? So if we decide to stop, can we recapture the value or redeploy the value that's been created in some meaningful way? Sometimes something gets developed to a point where it's like, for example, Dyson, when they were building their they were trying to build a luxury electronic EV car, a luxury car. They stopped after spending about $1 billion on it. They were okay at getting to know. They took all of the new technologies and all of the new processes and redeployed them across their entire product line. So they saw that as advancing all of their products while working on this one opportunity. And they exited that vehicle, but they redeployed the value that they got from it. So there's a question here about, do any of the supporting tools allow us to quantify the values? We do actually have we do have tools in the lab for defining values. And so when we're asking about strategic fit, we always want to go back and ask, is this actually aligning with those values? I will encourage you, we don't have a tool currently, it's an interesting idea, to score on, is an opportunity actually aligning with values. I think that's a really intriguing thought. Like, do it on a score of 1 to 5, with 1 being not really and 5 being very much so. Could we score these opportunities and say, to what degree are they aligned with the value set? I could see something like that, definitely. Being mindful of time, because I haven't given you any time for question and answer yet. There is a secret number 8 question. We talk about the Super 7. The number 8 question is when somebody says they know. So if you get to a yes to any of these questions, is there strategic fit? Yes. Is there portfolio fit? Yes. Is there wanted? Yes. Is it doable? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes. Acceptable, affordable? Yes. Real option value? Yes. You want to ask them this question: how do you know? Right? How do you know? This is the same question that my daughters were always asked in their math class, which is, don't just show me the answer, show me the work. Show me how you got to that answer. And it's the same thing with our innovators, is we want to understand, how did we get to a yes? What work was done? What proof do we have that actually validates that? And what we caution people here to avoid AAA, what we call AAA data, unproven assumptions or untested assumptions, anecdotal data. I know some people in another organization doing something like this. I think it might work here. And alternative data, right? I read a study from McKinsey. Well, that's great. I'm glad you're reading studies from McKinsey, but it may not. It wasn't a study on this, right? It might give us more certainty. It might give us more confidence, but it might not. It in all likelihood doesn't get us to yes. We always encourage people, we say, to believe in God. So gathering your own data. Like, those other sources of data are useful. They might make you feel a little bit more certain about your assumption, but it shouldn't get you to a yes. The yes should be, we've done a test, we validated through it could be a small light test, but we validated it somehow on our own. Okay, so that's the secret number 8 question that you can always pull on people when they finally get to a yes. You ask them to show you the work. All right, so that's a rush through the Super 7 really important questions to keep asking as an executive, as a manager, knowing I need to pass that data up to the leaders in our organization to make important decisions. As a member of an innovation team, no, this is the criteria we're working against and the information that we need to provide to our manager to get to the leaders so that they can make the decisions. And when we get to a no, I know I'm going to get celebrated and rewarded and assigned to the next cool new project. I'm not going to get punished like I would in the performance system for not delivering something. So, so that's that's a quick tour through that. Let's take the last 7 minutes or so that we've got here and take any questions that you might have.
I have a question, Greg. I wrote it on the chat. I have seen these sequential questions that I think make sense. I'm just wondering about this, is it, want it? Whether it should be really the first question to ask, because I think it's a crucial question that in many cases people try to avoid even to answer, because there is an idea, we check if there is strategic fit, portfolio fit, and then we go to the do. So I was wondering, is it perhaps the most crucial question to ask before even thinking about fitting to your portfolio? If it is not wanted, why should you spend time to evaluate strategic fit or even portfolio fit?
Yeah, no, I think you can make a strong argument for taking is it wanted and moving it all the way to the top of the list, right? It's like if there's not a real need there, then don't even evaluate its fit, right? So I think that's an excellent point. I could see that I see that play out in a lot of different situations, and it's very consistent with that operating principle of not expending capital where you don't need to, right? And I think one of the really interesting things when we talk about we will run into this conversation often. It's like, well, you're talking about pains and problems all the time, but there are a lot of really great innovations that weren't about pains and problems. It's like, yeah, but the way that they sold them was that they created dissatisfaction with the way something is. So you actually connect it to a pain or a problem, and using the Apple Music sort of ecosystem rethink. They created a lot of dissatisfaction with something that everybody was really happy with. Everybody was super happy with their Sony Walkman. Like nobody was complaining about their Sony Walkman. It was a great product, right? We were all happy with it. And they created a lot of dissatisfaction with that little shuffle. Like you can get 1,000 songs on this little thing. Instead, you've got that dorky thing you have to carry around that's this big and this visor, in your car full of CDs. And so they actually, in that case, in order to act on their vision, they created dissatisfaction with what is. And there's an equation that we use sometimes that is for the transformation that we're trying to achieve in our transformation that we're trying to achieve with our innovation, that from to shift that we want to create, that there needs to be, it says transformation equals D times V times P, where D is dissatisfaction, V is vision, and P is process, our way for getting there. So we've been showing you some of the process. The vision would be we've totally rethought the way that music is going to operate. We got to make you acutely unhappy with the way music operates today. Thanks for putting that in the chat. And you're absolutely right. I think now that means we got to change everything. I think you can make a really good argument that wanted ought to be up there before you worry about about your strategy.
I know it fits very well the worth it, the three things you have there.
No, I get the argument. I'm convinced. So any other seems like innovation is messy, and is it wanted may evolve once the prior points of validation are met. Innovation is messy. Innovation is iterative. I can't tell you how many times I have drawn in conversations with people rather than I say, people want it to be a straight line. We go from point A to point B, from idea to solution, but it's this looping thing, and it's not looping in one direction. It loops in lots of ways. It's iterative and it's looping and it's messy. And because it is driven by learning, driven by discovery. We believe something to be true. We try something, we learn from that, and we adjust our hypothesis. It's very much like the scientific method. So, John, I agree that you're gonna, as you're using that Super 7, the first stage when you're just testing pain and problem hypotheses. In fact, to Vasily's point, the first thing we're really only asking is, other than strategic fit and portfolio fit, which I'm going to question right now, we ask, is it wanted? Because we haven't even come up with a solution hypothesis, so we don't know. We don't get to doable or worth it or any of that. We just do those first three, right? When we start to generate solution hypotheses, we ask those again. When we start to accelerate and test components of it live in market, we're going to ask again. Each iteration, we're learning more, we're becoming confident about more things, but we're going to learn some, we're going to have surprises all along the way as well. So that's that idea of prior points of validation are met. Yeah, they'll be met, and then they'll be revisited because we're going to learn new things. And that's one of the things, also the mindset of is sort of exponential learning and exponential decision making that's going on here. It's very different than the sort of linear world of performance and production. Any other questions or comments, thoughts?
Sorry, I was just typing in there that I do agree that innovation is very messy, and I would like that we ask ourselves that question first, because we are in the business of solving people's problems, right? And sometimes they don't know that they have a problem. So we move on to the next question and ask ourselves if it's doable, and we focus more on our business, our viability, and also if we can do this thing, and then we put it out there. still as a prototype. So I really think there's any problem. This is just my opinion in asking if people really want it. Because if we ask that, if people want it, and their response that we get, the response from the research and everything is yes, we move quicker, right? Because they want it, we move quicker. But if the response is somehow like a no, we then move on to the next questions to make sure that we are on the right path. And it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so we phrase the question, is it wanted? But the work that you do is not by asking the question, is it do you want it? The work is done by asking other questions. Then we look at the answers and say, oh, are we hearing from what they're saying the need that's consistent with our hypothesis? So an example of that would be, what's the current situation? What's their current experience? What do I want their experience to like? What are obstacles or barriers that they're running into? What's preventing them from getting there? What do they feel? What's the pain that they're experiencing? What are the costs and consequences of that? So we ask a lot of questions and then go back and look at the answers and say, are we hearing in their answers a validation of what we believe to be true? I would almost never ask somebody point blank, here's something we're working on, do you want it? There are ways of doing that, which, if you have a solution, a hypothesis, of visualizing a concept and putting it out there, and then starting and getting validation, like the example I used with this pet food company that had a technology that they were testing, and they got huge response to that. So that's a validation. But they didn't even ask the question, is it wanted? It was it was a sign up for this product. They got a bunch of people sending in their emails asking for it. I think you're right to be cautious about the is it wanted question as just a straightforward question. You actually have to divine that out of some other work that we do.
Yes, and that, to counter my question before, even to do the is it wanted, it needs some capital. So someone has to approve that you spend time to answer this question. So this is where it goes a strategic fit and portfolio at the early stage before the is it wanted. Because to answer this question is not obvious always. So you need to commit capital to do it. So it seems to be like a small loop there.
Yeah. Lots of looping. Things that people got to get used to is looping. Great. So I think we've run over by
one question. I think.
Oh yeah, please.
I just stopped there, but I think I can place it vocal. I'm just thinking about the Super 7.
Yeah.
To get them all ticked in an organization that is placed in a diverse geographical locations and also culture. It could be a challenge. So what would be the most successful way of still deploying the innovation? And we're talking about mainly people impacting innovation in those diverse cultures and diverse geographical location, and still be winning on a Super 7.
Yeah. So I think that as I think I'm sharing my screen still. You're still seeing all these things. I'm going to go into I'm just going to show you in the lab that we have the ability in the lab to define small bets. So I'm just diving into a certain part of it, but in the next lab, we have the ability to, let me actually just jump out of this for a second. So we look at, we can track our innovation opportunities that we're working on. So we can look at different innovation opportunities. Here's one that's for junior airmen recruiting for the Air Force. And we can identify our assumptions. So what are the assumptions about it being wanted? What are the assumptions about it being worth it or doable? We can track all those assumptions. And then we can actually design small bets to test those. So run a 5-day test with simulation. What did we learn? The small bet outcomes, there's this 25% increase in participation. We're going to keep going with the opportunity. That's the implication when we validated that. So the reason I'm showing you a tool like this is that one of the ways to deal with a distributed team, a diverse team, is actually to give them a central place, to give them the tools to do the work, right? And to take advantage of the power of virtual tools that will actually allow us to track together, what's our budget that we got to spend on the project? How much have we actually spent so far? Where are we in the next development cycle? What have we learned? What do we know, et cetera? I'll take you into one that maybe has a little bit more, just to give you another example. I'm going to take you into product because Carlos is, now I'm going to actually take you into tech here. And we'll look at innovation management software. And you can see, you know, a whole bunch of, so imagine a team is able to see, we've got a bunch of assumptions that are untested. We've got some that are true. We have some that are false, and we can see where we are currently in our development cycle. So this is an example of a tool, a tool set that can be used to just give people a platform to operate on top of. I think that the answer to diversity and like different perspectives is make sure that you're designing very diverse teams, and they don't have to be working they can be working asynchronously, right? You can create tasks and assignments for teams to do, but you want to have multiple perspectives, lived experiences, whether that's by geography, economic, social, whatever it is. The more diverse your teams are, the more robust your solutions are going to be. So I think both, it's thinking about how are we designing the teams, as well as are we giving the teams the tools that they need to do the work.
Thank you. Yeah, very clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope that makes some sense. Yeah. Okay. Any other? I'm happy. I'm on vacation. I'm just sitting here in Brooklyn at a hotel. So if anybody wants to ask any other questions, I'll stick around. Hey, Nick.
Hey, what's up? Have you been using this same slide deck to explain this? Because I feel like the way that you put the Super 7 together with like those 3 following questions was really helpful.
You know, Nick, every presentation is a new adventure.
Yeah, it feels like it.
It's pieces of previous presentations put together for this talk for today. Yeah.
Awesome.
We can make the slides available, right? So Chris and Alfredo, if we make this to the participants, so we can make the slides available to everybody on the call who wants. That might be helpful also to see some of the other, to guide you to check out some of the other supporting tools.
Sure.
As a reminder for those of you who let's see, who have not been to check out some of the AI assisted tools that they currently live outside. Oops, they currently live outside the lab. So I'm going to share my screen and show you how to get to them. Okay, so if I just put in lab.solvenext.com and then /next_tools, which I'm just going to put in chat there. If you go there, you'll see some of the AI assisted tools that we're playing with right now. I showed you I indicated that the AI focus group tool is there. I definitely encourage you to go check it out. I can give you, if I can find it, these are some other examples of tools that I had lots of tabs open. Here's a focus group that we ran. This is an AI focus group that I ran with a group of 5-year-olds. So this is Alex Johnson. He's a 5-year-old boy attending kindergarten in San Francisco from a middle-class family. He's curious and energetic personality with high openness and extroversion, according to the Big Five, and a high influence in the DISC model. So we were testing the idea about liver flavored ice cream, and he says he likes ice cream because it's yummy and fun to eat. He wished that the ice cream that I'm proposing tasted sweet like chocolate or strawberry because liver sounds yucky. He wonders if any of his friends would like it better and if it would taste better than it sounds. And his wanted score on a score of 1 to 5 is a 1. So he doesn't really want liver flavored ice cream. Right? But that's a fun tool to play around with. The AI focus group, you can test hypotheses, problem hypotheses, and solution hypotheses. Very simple. You're just going to define the focus group characteristics. You're going to give them your hypothesis, and they're going to give you feedback. If I showed you that one again, let me see where did I put it? Sorry. Here we go. The other thing you can see there is here's the study who was included, what we were testing, a unanimous disinterest in the concept of liver flavored ice cream among the child participants. That there's a summary of their feeling, and I can read the full transcript of the conversation with them as well, and what each of them scored it and sort of why. So I get their I like, I wish, I wonder, and questions about it. So that's another another tool for you to go out and have a little bit of fun with. So I'd encourage you to check all those out.
I've been running demos with the people around these tools. So if you're interested in demoing or in reviewing, if you have been part of a demo before, you can always contact me and we can schedule it and we can go through it.
Okay.
I'll put my email there as well, just in case.
You had some great staying power. So Chris, you want to wrap us up?
Absolutely. So thank you for sticking around and thank you for staying longer than our scheduling time. So always, it's super exciting to talk about these things and to discuss the jobs to be done and the pains that go around innovation. As many of you said, it's never simple, it's never linear, and there's not always the space or the system in place in companies for it to be successful and for the people who are actually working on it to be able to do their job correctly. So it's our passion, it's our purpose, it's our goal, and we're excited to have more people join us in it. And for those of you who do not know, shameless plug, as Greg always says, we have a podcast in which we discuss these topics further. We talk about the systems of innovation, the tools behind this, and a lot of the different pains and problems that we face and come across when we talk about innovation in different organizations. So you're very much welcome to listen to it, share it, rate it, and have other people also join us in conversation. There you can also see our Substack if you use it and want to join. Subscribe to it. We're constantly also posting information around to it. My prepositions are always a challenge. And if you want to keep on talking, or we will be having these meetings on a monthly basis, and we're always happy to join in conversation elsewhere. So thank you for joining us again, and see you next time.